Hi, everybody. It's Tony Caldwell, and welcome to another episode of Uncaptive Agent. We're talking about the future of insurance distribution, the future of the independent insurance agency, and maybe the captive agency too, to the extent they survive. And anyway, I have with me today as my guest, Denise Johnson. Denise is a longtime friend of mine. She's been in the independent agency business really since she was in diapers. Her father, Ernie Cornelius, had an independent agency in Oklahoma City, which Denise and her brother Scott operated for a number of years. And now it's a third generation agency because Denise's daughter Avery is running it. A few years ago, Denise gave up the high-powered life of super producer and agency owner and operator to become the executive director and CEO of the Oklahoma Independent Agents Association. Denise and I served together on the board for many years, and she's really been, for the last few years, remaking the association in the face of what is happening to our industry, a lot of change. And so I asked Denise to join me today to talk about the future of the independent insurance agency from her perspective, and I think she's got a great one. So Denise, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. You and I have not got to talk in a while, so I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah, so me too. I think the last time we saw one another was at a Thunder basketball game, and they haven't been allowing an audience. So anyway, thanks for joining me. Let's start with COVID because we're in the middle still of COVID that won't end. And by the way, for our audience, we're speaking at the end of August 2021, and we had all thought that it was over. It's not. It's having a lot of really interesting impacts on independent insurance agencies. From your perspective, how's it changing the way agencies are going to operate going forward?
I feel like it has fast-forwarded agencies to probably a new time that they probably wouldn't have done 2 years ago. So it's something that they may have evolved into over the next, say 4 to 5 years, but suddenly they were catapulted into a new way to do business that they didn't have a choice about. And so I think at the very beginning, so if we go back to March of 2020, everyone was apprehensive. I mean, we sent out so much information with the association of how do you work remotely? How do you literally step by step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because very, very few of them, I would say the vast majority, 90% plus, just didn't know how to get there. So we literally sent out step by step, this is how you set up your agency and this is how you work remotely, and kind of held their hand to get them there. And you even like us, is that we thought this would be for just a short period of time, and then we would all get to turn around and we would just be done and it would magically go away. And what we found out that it didn't magically go away, and we had to continue to do it out of need. Well, the best part about that is that we just keep practicing it. So it's gotten better and better. And now I don't know that we can put the genie back into the bottle, because I think that's the way we now do business. I think it's normal.
Yeah. So, the genie is the kind of interesting thing. There's a lot of conversation around how's business ever going to go back to the office? And I know in our office, not everybody has gone back to the office. There's a lot of angst around what's the future of commercial real estate. Some agencies never change their operations. I've got a friend in Dallas who's real proud of the fact they just, they never shut down and thinks the whole thing that working from home is crazy. On the other hand, many agents think, that they don't want to go back to the office. So what are we going to do with the genie? What does it look like? What's the typical agency, do you think, going to be like over the next few years based on what COVID did to us?
I think there's going to be a lot of different models for it. I think we're going to see a lot of hybrid models. The phone calls that I get right now are, I don't know that I'm ready to be remote full time and sell the office building, but I also don't know if I'm ready to bring everyone back in and have an 8 to 5 office anymore, because that doesn't work either. And as we know, in HR world and with employees, our competition now is going to be what other places can offer. So we're going to have to be more nimble in what we do. So as we go forward, I think we're going to have to look at hybrid situations. What's going to be best? I don't know what's going to work in Hobart, Oklahoma compared to Oklahoma City or Tulsa. It could look completely different. So the nimbleness of what we have to do as a small business, not just an insurance agency, but a small business, How are we going to do business differently? And I think the fear, this is just my personal opinion, but I think the fear of letting everyone work remotely, like, I don't think they'll get every done. Are they going to be as efficient? Are they, what they found out during that long stretch of COVID is they woke up and they found out it was more efficient in many ways. They were able to do business. No one dropped the ball. I mean, I'm sure the ones that did, they didn't survive very well. And so what they found is they ended up with better quality employees in a lot of ways. So I think the thing people might have missed is the camaraderie. The very important, if you and I haven't talked in a year, which, you and I would talk pretty frequently during the year, we haven't spoken. So how do you get the camaraderie of you have like a sharing of ideas all together, which is really important in an office setting? So I think a hybrid situation is maybe what we're going to see.
That's really interesting about the camaraderie. I participate in a number of coaching groups, things like that, where, we get together on a regular basis and we, we're in each other's physical presence, having dinner and talking about ideas. And we've tried to move that onto Zoom. In fact, I just got off of a Zoom call with a group that I normally meet with in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And it's good. It's just not quite the same. And I was having lunch this week with another close friend, and we hadn't seen each other in a while. And I said, I just really miss the personal interaction that we're not having, and we're still not having it. So I'm with you. I think that's really important. Humans crave that. Mm-hmm. But I think we have discovered something that is, if not equally valuable in a personal way, maybe more valuable in a business sense, and that is that geography's dead. So you mentioned Hobart, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma City, and some of our listeners probably don't know where those places are. You guys can, they're Googling Hobart right now. Like, where is that? But really what you're talking about is small town America and bigger city America. And the truth is, whether you're in a big city or a small town, you can now sell insurance and have relationships and talk to people face to face wherever they're located. And so somebody in Hobart can have clients in San Francisco or New York City if they want to, right? Oh, yeah. Because now everybody is on Zoom or some version of telecommunicating. And so do you see agents, and I know you talk to folks all over the country, do you see agents beginning to take advantage of that and to expand their geographic outreach?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think that, let's call it the state lines. I think the state lines are now blurred in a way that they've never been blurred before. So it used to be, you would have to be licensed in Oklahoma, and you still have to do all this, of course, but, then you'd have to go get licensed in Kansas. Do I really want to do an account in Kansas? Well, I could see a day where everyone's just going to have some sort of, not a national license, but probably a license in, say, the contiguous, at least 48 states, and just do business as if there was no lines at all. And because our clients are doing that, our clients aren't just keeping their businesses within the state lines. Our clients are buying businesses or buying homes or traveling or doing whatever in other states. They don't see that state line as a boundary. They see it as an opportunity too. So if we're going to continue to service our clients, we're going to have to be able to do business in other states. So we just expand it from there. And that's what I see with agencies doing.
One of the things I think that COVID has done is to your point, is to accelerate us to where we ought to be. It seems like, agencies, we're always about 5 years behind the curve. It's a real traditional business, and agents aren't typically on the cutting edge. But I remember, I guess it's 10, 15 years ago, in your agency, you and Scott had actually hired somebody to work in the hours when the agency wasn't open. And I think she was a single mom staying at home, taking calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so you were answering what many agencies are still not doing, which is to provide 24/7, 365 service through a really kind of a creative solution. Mm-hmm. What do you think agencies are doing? What are agencies doing today that are on the cutting edge to provide 24-hour, 365, 7 days a week? Man,
work all the time.
Got that really screwed up. But anyway, service people when the people want the service. What's the cutting edge of that look like today from your vantage point?
I think agencies of today, and even a small agency can do it now. So not just the little mom and pop that's, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, which is, really 72% of our agencies in our association right now have 7 employees or less. So they're mom and pop businesses in small town, wherever on Main Street. I think what we're going to see with the trend of being able to provide, let's call it all-time service, 24/7 service, is they're going to have to depend on technology in a way they've never done it before. And luckily, I do think, and to go back to your point about COVID, I think COVID has created so much more in technology in the way that we do business and run business, that I think you're going to be able to see that expand. So when you start looking at AI, you start looking at virtual assistants, things like that. That would have been 2 years ago. If I would have had someone come speak at our conference about virtual assistants, they would have been like, "What? No, we're not gonna do that." And now it's a very viable way that when we're looking for support, then we can do it, because we really want. Because I still think we're in a people business. So I think our people that are in our agency, so if there's only 5 people there and they're needing to figure out how to expand their business, they're going to have to be able to push those tasks down. And no longer can it be that $10 or $15 an hour person. It's going to have to be something with more technology that can just be efficient for them, so they can continue the relationships and working toward building better accounts.
So what's the deadline? If you're not providing, continuous all-time service, as you called it, by when are you going to really not have a future? When does this happen?
I think as we see a change in generations, as you said earlier, my daughter is taking over the agency, and so she sees a timeline in a much different way than I see it. I would have said 5 years. I would have said 7 years as we transition out of. No offense, but most of the faces of agency owners are about the face of you and I,
Right.
So as they start transitioning out over the next 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 years, then we have that younger generation. I think the opportunity is incredible. But as those younger ones come in, and very quickly, I think it's going to be quicker than we realize, they're going to put it on a fast-paced scale that I could see in the next very quickly 3 to 5 years, that they're going to have a lot more technology in place. So there's going to be a cross in all of that.
So let's talk about that changing agency ownership demographic for just a second. I remember back in the 90s, when I was in the Oklahoma legislature, there were 31 Republicans there. I think there's like 80 Republicans in the Oklahoma House today, when there were 31 in my caucus. So it was an uphill battle to get something done, but we were really confident, because what we used to say in those days, not very kind, is that Democrats are dying and marching off the page of history, and we could see the demographic changing, right? Yeah. And so we see the same thing happening today in the agency force, where, to your point, there's a lot of old people running agencies, and I think the average agency owner is something around 60, but we know that. And about half of all of the people, both agency owners and employees, are going to retire in the next 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. And so that's one issue. So we got to have new blood to take over. At the same time, agencies are selling at a rate and at prices that have never been seen before in history. There's 35,000 agencies still. There's been 35,000 agencies for the last generation. Most estimates are now that in the next 5 to 7 years, there'll be 25,000 agencies. Mm-hmm. Agencies are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Mm-hmm. So because of that. And so here's the question. Is there a future for the local community-based independent agency as opposed to the behemoths that are being created? And how fast does the transition need to happen in terms of agency ownership and leadership, really more importantly, for those local agencies to stand a chance against the big guys that are being created?
So I actually do think there's a future for smaller agencies, because I think we're still in the people business. I actually think that there's so many people that are still very entrepreneurial and the way that they look at business. So it's the guy that starts out mowing 2 lawns in their neighborhood and suddenly looks up 10 years later and, he's got a conglomerate with 20 trucks and he's, mowing the lawn for the entire city of Oklahoma City or something like that. I think the same opportunity is here with insurance agencies. Here's the thing, is that my dad's agency that he started in 1964, he loved being an independent agent because he always loved to say, I'm independent. I can do this on my own. I don't think that's the thing anymore. So we don't have to fold into a very large agency anymore, or be bought out by a large agency if you still want to run your own small business. But I don't think you can be my dad's agency of standing there by yourself. I think you have to be part of, so now we have, I don't think they like to be called, but we have, cluster groups, alliances, even OAAs. That how do you depend on each other that you can still maintain your autonomy or your independence, but still grow your business? I just don't think you can do it all by yourself anymore. So what I think we're going to see, here's what we're looking at in our association. So if we look at 72% of our agencies are 7 employees or less, but they're going to continue to grow. And then the rest of them are all bigger. And then I only have probably my top 8 or 9% are large, maybe 100 employees or more. What I'm starting to see is that you're seeing more and more of them grouped together in cluster or alliance groups. And so that way they combine their loss ratios, their sales or revenues, all of that, and even their agency management systems, and learn to work together, but still maintain their autonomy of what they want. I do think that is a trend of the future. And I think that's how you can you're still going to have small mom and pop business, but have the ability to grow.
So if 52%, I think that's the last number I saw, of all independent agencies belong to some sort of organization like that, I think what I'm hearing you saying, unless you're a large national organization, which by de facto means you're a big organization, you're going to have to be a part of something else to be able to compete with those big organizations.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
okay.
I think
that's interesting. So 48% of the agencies are going to be doing something different in the next few years, apparently, or they're not going to be here.
Yeah, they're going to have to join in, and they can easily, I think they can find a group that they can relate to. There's so many of them and they're all different. They all have different, attitudes. They all have different,
Sure.
long-term plans. So, I think they can find someone.
I totally agree with that. I mean, you mentioned my company, One Agents Alliance, OAA we're often known by. We have 180 some odd 185 agencies today, in a market territory that probably has 10,000 agencies. So we're a big player in that group, but was on the overall numbers, not that big. And the reason is because we're not for everybody, right? And there's a lot of choices, to your point, for that. But I think most of our members recognize they're better off in a bigger group than they are by themselves.
Yeah, that's
so the agency of the future, and again, we're just talking about what does it look like in 3 to 5 years. One of the concerns that many people have is the viability of an agency that does much in the personal lines business. And so under a certain size, under $1 million of revenue, about 60-70% of the business is personal insurance in the typical agency. In independent agencies, just during our career, agents, we went from a 15% market share in personal insurance to about 30%. So the independent agency system picked up a lot of personal insurance business in the last 25, 30 years. But direct sellers are gaining rapidly, both on independent agents and also on exclusive direct writers and captives. And it's a transactional business, which is increasingly driven. Transactions are driven by low cost. So if you're going to make a transaction business, you've got to do it with whatever it means to be the low cost provider, which typically means you've got to be fairly big to afford the things you have to do. So I've talked to 3 agents this week, in fact, who, looking at, do they want to start or buy, own, be owners of the business that they work in today, all of whom real bearish on selling personal insurance going forward. How do you feel about that? Do you think that agencies that are going to survive in this 5-year transition, 10 years that we're talking about, do they have to get out of personal insurance? Do they have to do it differently? What does that look like from your perspective?
That's a debate I probably have with a lot of my younger age agency owners or producers, because, is it worth their time? And a lot of times, as agencies don't necessarily want to hire a producer to go out and sell personal lines.
Mhm.
And it's also, so let's say for the guy that, owns in Oklahoma, $250,000 house and has a, nice car, whatever, that's great for the direct writers or the ones that are just, being online. But very quickly, as as people progress in their careers and all that, insurance becomes a little bit more complicated. And no matter what, there's still a need to round out that account. So I think there's a need for it, but I think it's like whenever we go in and try to sell off our book of business, we shave off that bottom 20% because we're not needing it and all of that. That's what this will do. And I think it'll happen on a very large scale. So that's what we go to the direct writers or the captives or whatever and shave that off. But I still think there's a level of personal lines that are going to be necessary, but I think it's more of a rounding out of accounts. So that way you control an entire account with someone that has probably a business account or more than one business, and then a variety of, I got a car, a boat, a lake house, an Airbnb, and I fly a plane, and I live in the mountains part of the time. And so it gets more sophisticated the farther along that they get with clients. So I always laugh because I really love right now, I just love the Progressive commercials. I love them. Because I think they're really funny. I think they really get people's attention. And I also think that's a really good springboard for an agent to be able to take that conversation to the next level. So I figure if a Progressive or a State Farm is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising, I love it because I don't have to spend that hundreds of millions of dollars, but I can utilize it because it brings insurance into the conversation, so.
Okay, so I heard you say two different things. I heard you say that really the future for agents for personal insurance ought to be in larger, complex, more expensive account rounding for successful business owners.
Yeah.
Then I heard you say that Progressive, which is one of the people that has commoditized personal insurance, making everyone focus on a price rather than coverage or any of the other relationships, which is what agents used to always believe was their value proposition, that those people are creating opportunity for independent agencies. So which is it? Can agents make it and be profitable, successful, building a business and a future for their families in a commodity price game?
I guess they could if they're gonna use technology. That's how it's working with all the other ones. So they're going to have to be willing, if they have a small agency that they want to grow, they're going to have to use technology, because that's where they're not going to be able to afford employees to just do the commoditization of small accounts. They're going to have to do it and learn to grow it.
Okay, so they're going to have to get into a business that they're going to have to get into competition with businesses that employ data scientists,
right,
and are using artificial intelligence at a really high level, and they're going to compete with those people on a price basis in a commodity transaction game.
Yeah.
They're going to win how? How are they going to win? How can they ever do that? How can they afford to do that?
I don't know that they can, unless unless they use it as a service center. Again, it could be just the springboard. So as when you start selling insurance, if you're that young, fresh out of college, 25-year-old, you use it as a springboard. So you sell to your parents and your cousins and your everything, and you just start springboarding with those small. I don't know that it's sustainable, that that's what you'll be doing the 5 or 10 years from then. So because you'd have to have the technology that's able to do it. So
okay. So I know a guy named Peter DeMonis who's written a couple of books. The first book was Abundance, The Future's Better Than You Think. The second follow-on book was The Future's Faster Than You Think, which is interesting because his thesis was it's coming faster than most people think. COVID certainly sped up the future.
Yeah, it's true.
So Peter has like the 5 Ds. It's got a little formula called the 5 Ds. I won't remember them all, but like one of them is that change is deceptive. And the idea is that when you're doubling one, it takes a long time for it to become exponential, but you go along and it's really deceptive. Change doesn't, and then all of a sudden, whammo, it goes straight up. And that's the power of compound interest too. So change is deceptive. And I think we certainly have seen that over the last 2 or 3 years. We've seen it over the last 18 months for sure. And I think that's going to happen in the future. So he says that change is deceptive until it's disruptive. And that's very true. You look at things that completely revolutionized the world. Where did they come from? Well, they've been there for a long time. They just didn't have, you just weren't noticing them because they were being deceptive. One of his other little D's is that that change is that deceptive and disruptive technology becomes demonetized. In other words, people find a way to do things without a transactional money, and most of the internet is like that. Most of the internet's getting paid for someplace else. But one of the other things is that it's democratized, and what he means by that is that technology costs plummet fairly rapidly in today's world, and so for agents, I think there's an argument to be made that the technology that agents will need to compete with people like Progressive, who are attracting, customers on the idea that there's a transaction and it's a cheap one, that if they want to do that, that technology is actually going to be affordable. Now, that the argument then becomes, well, is that good for the agent? Is it good for the consumer? I'm one who would argue that it's bad for the consumer, first of all, and if it's bad for the consumer, it's bad for the agent, because that consumer is buying something that's really complicated based on price, and therefore they're probably not buying the right thing. And they didn't buy the right amount, and that when that shows up is when something bad happens. They get in a wreck and they find out that, I don't have enough coverage to take care of my car, the other guy's car, and the person that I hurt, or their house. And we see this every time we have a big tornado in Oklahoma. They didn't buy enough insurance to rebuild their house, especially when how many people do you think are underinsured in the United States on their homeowners insurance?
Oh gosh, I would say that's got to be a crazy number. 30%.
No, it's 100%. It's 100%. You know why? Because lumber's gone up by 100%. In the last year, and appliances have gone up by 50%. Every component of a house, it has gone up by, high double digits in the last year. What that means is, if your house blows down, it's going to cost way more than you thought it was even 6 months ago to insure. So I believe 100% of homeowners are underinsured. And I think it's a challenge for agents to keep up with that. But I guarantee you that, maybe it's better for the average independent or direct writer captive agent who sat down and had a conversation with their homeowner client about it. But if you bought your insurance from Geico, Progressive, or somebody like that, it's guaranteed they're underinsured. Same thing is true. If I ask you, what's the percentage of people who are underinsured for physical damage on an automobile? What's the answer? 100%. Used car prices, which is what essentially you're buying when you're buying actual cash value on an auto, right? Used auto prices are up anywhere from 25 to 100% in the last 12 months. So everybody's underinsured. Now, how many conversations did an agent have with his total client base or her total client base in the last 12 months about that? Probably a high percentage. How many conversations did Geico or Progressive have with their customers about that issue?
Probably zero.
Okay. So here's my answer is, everybody needs an agent, even in a commodity price game. Everybody needs an agent, and everybody that's not served by an agent is not being served. And this is just a great time. This happens, and it's not just related to COVID. This happens from time to time for a variety of reasons.
It's a great time to see the market shift.
So kind of brings you to the point of, in terms of looking at the agent of the future, though, how do they build their business? Do they want to do it on you can't provide that kind of service if you're just focused on doing transactions for the cheapest price.
Right.
But I'll be interested to see to hear what you have to say about this. I think the young agent of today doesn't know any better and can't do any better. And what I mean by that is I think they don't know how to sell anything. We had a person recently, one of my team told me about that. Somebody said, came to him and said, I don't know how to answer the objections that the people are raising for me when I'm talking to them about buying a policy. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because when I got started in selling, that's what that's what I was taught first, was memorize 25 answers to objections. And I thought it was a lot of work, and, what was the point? But the point is everybody, objections are buying signals. And if you don't know how to deal with those, you can't sell it. And so now we have salespeople that don't even have that training.
Know how to sell.
So if they don't know how to sell anything besides here's the cheapest price, you should buy it because it's cheapest. Well, okay, that's not selling, that's order taking.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, from where you sit, how do you think, how well trained as salespeople are today's insurance agents compared to, say, your dad's generation or even our generation?
Yeah. That's interesting, because here at the association over the last 2 years and a little bit, I'll say it under the shadow of COVID, we went in and completely restructured our entire organization. In fact, we started a new department called Agency Opportunities. And we have assessments that are that as a member of the association, you get to take an assessment of where your agency is. So it might be financial, it might be operations. But one of the things we've done that I'm most excited about, because I feel this is a hole in, let's call it a new generation of those trying to come in and sell insurance. So a little bit sales focused, but mostly professional. We've concentrated so much on continuing education. It's very important. We have to be licensed. We understand the importance of all of that. We understand we need to be able to check everything off the box and know the answers. However, professional education is something that we have just kind of ignored, because if you don't get CE for it, then I don't want to do it. And we have a lot of agency owners with their younger producers that they don't talk a lot about networking. How do we, part of that healthy competition is that you have healthy competition. So if you're out on the football field and you're competing against each other, well, it's the same as insurance. We haven't taught that very well, and we haven't encouraged it. Really, when we're bringing in young producers into our agencies, a lot of times it's been like, here's your computer, there's your desk over there, go get them, Charlie, and you got it. And we haven't done that well. So what do we need to do? So we've developed a professional network we call it Elite Network. We have a next gen program. We kind of did a little bit of diversity and things like that. But how do you create a network of people that you can go to and learn sales approaches, learn how to interact with people, learn about the industry, mentorships, things like that have just not been done. So
Denise, it sounds like you agree with me that today's agent can't sell their way out of a wet bag, and you need to help them. Is that
unfortunately, I've seen a little bit of that. I'm a little bit mortified by it. So
okay. So you should go into politics because you're hard to pin down. But
okay.
But I'll say it, today's agent can't sell their way out of a wet paper bag. They don't know how to answer objections. They don't know how to, they make claims about a product, but they don't relate it to what's in it for me, for people. They don't know the basics of salesmanship, right? Mm-hmm. So they know how to go in, they know how to do a questionnaire. Like, give me your policy, I'm going to copy it. They know how to do an apples to apples comparison, mm-hmm. and they can use a multi-company rating system to give you 16 different quotes on what you've already got, and then show you that my price is cheaper, and so you should do business with me.
Right.
But like the conversation that was had in my organization a week or so ago, if you raise an objection besides the price, they don't know what to do with it. So could we agree together that if the independent agency, the local independent, and by the way, I'll make this comment, that the big players that are buying agencies, okay, they're buying sophisticated books of business, all the rest of that, they're pouring a ton of money into the data analytics around this, and they're teaching and training their people how to sell. And you can't work as a service person, much less a salesperson, in those organizations unless you can sell stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
So if we're going to compete with this, so if the local independent agency wants to survive and compete, they've got to be technologically savvy. We've established that. Yeah. But I would argue that they've got to be really good sales organizations, not order takers.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
we would agree with that.
I would by and large say that this is a generational problem, because I go to restaurants a lot because you were kidding earlier about, you ran out of food, with your illness and family tragedies, and we're kidding with your husband, you're going to have to cook. And, that resonated with me because my wife and I, come to the same place where, we're going to have to cook for ourselves because restaurants aren't open. So anyway, I go to a restaurant and I order my meal. And at the end of the meal, the waiter or waitress comes up and says, "Do you want anything else?" And I think, well, no, but you could sell me something else. You could make it irresistible, but you won't even make the effort. You're just an order taker. You're not really a great service person. To me, if you're going to be a great service person in the industry that we're in, it means that you have to expose people to choices and options, and you have to show them why it's in their best interest to do that. And you have to be able to do more than just take the order.
And to your point, I do agree there's somewhat of it generational. I wouldn't call it millennial or Gen X or anything, but a little bit generational is that I would say my dad's generation, maybe even our generation, my dad actually made it look really easy to sell things. Yeah. I mean, he did. He was, and he got relationships and still does to this day, and so they get relationships. We learn how to do that. And so we've made it look real easy to where you and I both know it's a fine art, and it's something that we've practiced that.
Well, so he didn't have a multi-company rating system. No. So, he didn't. So, and he didn't have Progressive making everybody think that price was what mattered. I once asked a really good professional bass fisherman, I said, "What if there was one piece of advice you could give me to become a better fisherman, what would that be?" And he said, "Okay, what's your favorite lure?" And I told him it's a buzzbait. He goes, "Leave that on the bank." And his point was, if you want to get better at something, you have to learn to use the tools that you don't use all the time. Yeah. And so price is your number one tool. Okay. And you want to get to be a better salesperson. Don't talk about the price. Don't use the price as the selling thing. Find something else. And, it works. It does work. So,
to your point, I think the one thing we learned from COVID, to go back a little bit to what we talked about earlier, is that if we would have had an agent selling an insurance policy to a restaurant in, let's say, January of 2020, so just prior to COVID, I'm not sure that they would have gone all the way down the rabbit hole of saying, here's all the exclusions that are in a normal restaurant policy package, and they definitely wouldn't have gone down the rabbit hole. Now, if there's ever a worldwide pandemic, there's going to be an exclusion on that. I just don't think any of that would have happened, because that's just not how they do again. And I think any restaurant at that point wouldn't have questioned it, but you fast forward to April of 2020, and those restaurants would have paid any amount of money, regardless of price, if they would have had that coverage on there.
Right. Yeah. Well, so by the way, if anybody's still listening to us, Denise's organization can hook you up with some really great sales training. Dynamics of selling, things like that. So, which segues me to the kind of the penultimate question I want to ask you, which is, as agencies change, their professional organizations that represent them and collaborate with them have to change. So how do you think that the Independent Agents Brokers of America and the Independent Agents of Oklahoma need to change from where you are today, say in the next 5 years, to continue to be relevant and really providing excellent service to your members? What does that change look like?
We actually just finished our strategic plan meeting with our board last week. So we actually have been asking these very questions. And like I said, during the past year, under the shadow of COVID, is when we developed an agency opportunities, because those small agencies don't have time to hire a personal coach or someone to come in and completely revamp their agencies. But we can do that by being a member of the association. So what we started looking at, the biggest issue that I come up against as an association, is that we have so many resources available to our agencies that are small business that we just can't tell them about all of them enough. And we can hand them, the nice little card that says, here's the, 50 things that we can get. Thank you for your membership, and hand me a check, and you walk out the door. Well, we found that wasn't beneficial. They didn't fully understand it. They have enough on their plate. They stick the folder in the file and they never do anything with it. So we started asking ourselves a year ago, what can we best do to make our agencies better? That 7 employed and under agency, and how do we assist them with what they already have by being a member of our association? So we developed what we call agency opportunities, and we have assessments that are available, and it's so simple, but it's for any size agency, anyone that's a member. It's done by a few of the different associations, because we have a great collaboration between many states across the United States, because like our agents, our members, our lines have blurred also. So what used to just happen in Wisconsin doesn't just happen in Wisconsin anymore. It bleeds out. And so we said a year ago, what do we need to do to best assist our agencies with the products and services and resources that we have that they're already paying for as members? And so we have 6 assessments that are available completely free of charge that they can go through. They can assess their agency. They can assess all the different things that they have in it. And then they get a report at the end that says, here's all the resources that you have if you need help with technology, if you need help with finance, we have InsureBank, whatever it is. And we want to do things to help make our agencies better and to grow that small business, because again, they can't do it by themselves. They can do it a little bit with cluster groups, but we're also a partner with them to make it better. We do the same with you. Whenever we partner with OAA in a lot of ways that we feel it makes our business better, we hope we make your business better.
Well, so what I hear you telling me is that in a very complex world with a million different things and lots of opportunities from all over the place, that it's bewildering and overwhelming to the agency owner. What you're focusing on is simplifying, and helping them to figure out how to make really good choices among the bewildering array of options. That's a part of the future of the Independent Agency Association, is to simplify the lives of its members. That's what I heard you say. So, all right, last question. You are the proud mother of a really ambitious, aggressive, and successful daughter running the 3rd generation of the family business. So I know you have a lot of confidence in the future of the independent agency system because of that alone. And if you had to give her one piece of advice to guarantee her future and her success over the next 5 to 10 years, what's the one thing you would tell her to do?
And you can imagine we have had this conversation, so none of this will be a surprise to her. I would tell her she doesn't have to do it alone, and to rely on people that she knows, that she doesn't have to be always the smartest person in the room, because there's so many other in the industry that can help her. Okay,
great. Which is, again, I'm going to paraphrase you, but you've got to you've got to be willing to partner with people and be willing to be vulnerable enough to take the help freely offered that's available in our industry. And to your point, this is one beautiful thing about our business is, and I remember this so well, sitting across the conference room table on an independent agents board meeting, laughing and talking with a guy who had just stolen one of my best accounts from me, and he's still my friend. And, while we're chuckling and laughing about whatever we're talking about, I'm vowing to myself to, get even. And so
like it.
That's the kind of business we have, right? We can be competitors, but we're also friends, and we're collaborators. So it's a wonderful industry from that standpoint.
Some of my best friends, I would say that.
Yeah, and you would take their best client from them any day of the week. So
you're right.
And they would do. So, well, Denise, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a wonderful conversation. I mean, I just looked at the clock and went, oh, crap, we went way over time because we could keep going. But I hope that somebody's gotten something useful out of this.
I hope so, too.
And I appreciate so much you being with me, especially since I know that next week you've got a big event. You're really busy. So Thank you.
Yeah. Happy to do it. We're looking forward to seeing everyone.
I'm talking to independent agency owners about this all the time. If you'd like to have a more personalized conversation, click on the button or the link in the description and we'll make that happen. You can also reach out to me at tonycaldwell.net/contact.